Dragon Ball Masters community, welcome back to another video with Guy Chris. It's been a while. Hope you guys are having a good holiday season. I wanted to wait until after Nats to start making content again, but I wanted to put out this video just to have some conversation around the ban list that we had. The ban list has been out for, I think, recording this video came out about a week ago, roughly. So it's very interesting to think of. This hat and my forehead just don't for some reason just don't mix. Man, it's crazy. I wasn't expecting a ban list, as I'm sure most of us weren't expecting a ban list. But the fact that we got one and it hit Kidku is really telling. Like this Nats is gonna be very interesting. We have almost no data going into this nationals. Like there's just nothing. There's nothing that we can look at and saying, okay, this is what's going to be like new that's going to be good. We obviously have the old staple decks that are not Kid Q that are going to be good, which we'll talk about here in the video. So 4 tiers here. Quickly, I'm going to run down the like the ban list, just kind of my thoughts on everything. So we had Bulma Bunny Girl and the 4-drop Nova promo. Both were banned. Free play is bad unless it's a skill like Overrealm, and Bandai has done a pretty good job of removing a lot of the broken stuff. Bulma Bunny Girl, I think why they waited so long is honestly we have the answers. We've always had the answer for Bulma Bunny Girl, which is Koitsukai. I know some people will say that's not enough, but it really is. It really is, and just utilizing more Koitsukai just allows you to tax your opponent, especially Kid Q matchups where they were playing, Chaozu and Bulma Bunny Girl, right? Or you just play black decks because black is really good in the Kid Q, and it has been for a while. They also banned the 4-drop Nova promo, which allowed you to play 30k for free. That was probably unintended. I feel like I don't think they meant for it to be that. I know the promo they wanted it to probably play the 4-drops, the 4-drop ices, or the 2-drop ice or something like that. So I don't think they wanted it to play. I don't remember actually. It might say 8-drop. I don't actually have the card. But free play obviously like off of those type of skills is ridiculous. So they I think the national seasons was enough for them to ban that card. And then they obviously errated Kid Q to where it no longer hits unisons, which is essentially makes the deck just really bad in some regards, because now just unison decks can just actually functionally play the game. Now it is kind of strange that this happened after we've already had every other nationals other than North America's, and I'll give a little pushback for people who are a little pissed about that. You have to remember we had no events from the time that the new set dropped to now, right? Like there was no events. It went directly into national season, so that's more so the problem than them waiting so long to ban these cards. I think if we would have had like 1 or 2 events before national season started, they probably would have hit the Oceania card, or the Oceanus card, and Bulma Bunny Girl. But Oceanus didn't do anything prior to national season. It won the French nationals, which really doesn't matter considering it didn't have the new set. And then it got 2nd place in Oceania against Kid Q. Which again, I don't know how. I didn't find the deck to be better than Nova, so I just find it very strange. But now both of those decks just seem to be not very useful or playable, at a high competitive level. Which I'm gonna put Kid Q in C and Oceanus just in D tier for now. So, and I haven't labeled these yet, but we'll talk about him here in a second. Yeah, so I don't think it was like favoritism or anything. I think they just needed more events to ban the Oceanus card. As for Bulma Bunny Girl, I talked about this a lot already, but the Kid Q meta was the weakest meta that we've had for a tier 1 deck in probably like 2.5 years. If you look at all of the other tier 1 decks that we've had going into national season, right? We had Universe 7 Goku last year. The 2 years before that, we had the Red Sin, Red Gogeta meta. Obviously, those were kind of hit before nationals as well, but they were still rampant everywhere, right? And this is all 3 of those decks compiled with the year before that, which was Cell Surge. as being like the boogeyman. All of those decks were better than Kid Q, right? Kid Q, as much as Kid Q won, Kid Q has had very obvious counter picks that were just really solid decks that also did super well in the Kid Q, i.e. Tapion. You had Vegito. You had both dragon decks. Right there, that spans 3 different colors in the game. So it was confusing to me that everyone just kind of complained about Kid Q. I never saw the problem with it. I always played well in the Kid Q. So I could just be my own personal opinion on that. I just never found it to be that oppressive. So to me, it was just kind of weird that people were just complaining about the deck the entire time. I didn't really actually. I wanted it to not be hit, so it would make my Nats deck much easier of a choice. But now that that's gone, my Nats deck is as good as it could be. I probably will have to pivot off of it to something else. So with Nova, real quick before I actually go into Nova, so the tier is here. So we're gonna have tier A is gonna be, I'm gonna consider just the top of the meta. So these are decks that we're gonna see that are like meta defining. These are gonna be the decks that you're gonna see you're probably gonna see one of these decks win our nationals, and you'll probably see one of these decks win worlds, is my guess, unless there's like a strange crazy counterpick that comes out of nowhere, kind of like the Crimson sort of thing. We'll change this to meta defining, I guess. High chance very, very long-winded way. So meta defining, high chance, high percentage of winning nationals, right? Then we have B tier, which is going to be existing in meta. These are going to have high percentage of topping nationals. C tier. We're going to put in kind of the rogue tier. He's going to have low percentage of topping. I'm actually going to take the nationals out of this just to kind of shrink it a little bit, because I know you guys know what I'm talking about here. And then same thing with this one. Okay. And then D tier, I'm just going to put just not competitive, not viable. Let's try to shorten it there. Okay. Yeah, so D tier decks are just going to be decks that I don't feel are just not viable currently. C tier it's going to be rogue, B tier existing in the meta, A tier, right? So because of that, like I said, I don't think Kid Q or Oceanus are going to be viable. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Yes, Kid Q will probably be viable in more of like a rogue tier option now. It doesn't have all the free play. It doesn't have the unison removal, so there's a lot of stuff that's going to be able to hit this deck now. But if you guys saw, as much as everyone hates Ritzy, he did have a red-yellow build of this that he did end up winning an event with. I don't think that exact build will be played, but I think people might tap into some other things, other colors, like using yellow as kind of a crutch a little bit more, possibly to make this deck kind of more mid-rangey. I think obviously you still have Chaozu. I believe there's cards that can actually recycle Chaozu as well, so you have a chance to still be okay. But it's definitely not going to be meta defining anymore. That deck is just it's seen its last day. It already was had bad matchups into as the decks already said, Cell Reboot, Tapion, Vegito, both of the Dragon decks. But now that's going to be even more heightened now because it's not going to be as good with Alboma. And then Oceanus, I just don't think it's playable anymore. I think you just play Nova. And Nova's going to be one of the A tier decks we're going to talk about. I want to just shorten these as much as I possibly can. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I just wanted to. That was bugging me. The little like side extra like slot there was kind of bugging me. Okay. All right. Yeah. So Nova. Nothing with Nova changed. Nova's still gonna be really good. However, I don't think Nova is gonna be the best deck. We'll get to what I think the best deck is gonna be. And actually, I will make another tier. I'll make one more tier, and I'll make it the S tier. So there are 2 decks that I feel like are probably going to be the best decks. We'll talk about those in a second. So Vegito. These 4 decks here: Vegito, Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Gogeta, Cumber. So all of these are here for a reason. We have the unbanning of Marvelous Might, which kind of threw a lot of us off. I don't understand exactly why they unbanned the card, but it is unbanned. 20k barrier can sprout 2 little 5k bodies. It's an interesting card. It's not meta breaking. It's not like, you know, insanely good. It is a very solid support piece. Absolutely. Like, I think now in Vegito and Goku Xeno, you just play this card 2 of 3 of, and you just have a very good pressure piece for 1 energy. Especially with Vegito, when there's turns where you don't have Vegito online, you can now go into the Marvelous Might, and you can at least still draw off of your leader effect. So these 4 are the decks that actually use the card, because the new deck that's coming out, Pan, is what we're assuming with the TPs that were revealed. Among all the other like Black Saiyan leaders, they're all Earthling and Saiyan, and they can't actually use the card. You have to be Saiyan only. So that's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird that they unbanned it. I wasn't really expecting them to do that. So these 4 decks here are kind of the 4 decks that can actually utilize the card very well. I'm not going to include Bardock Prism in this. So Vegito is definitely going to be a meta-defining deck. I think this deck is actually better than Nova. I think it's been better than Nova. I think people weren't playing it, and I think people still don't play it optimally. We've seen we saw this deck win an event, but then after that we haven't actually seen people really play it. And I think a lot of people got off the deck, but also I've watched a lot of gameplay on this man, and there's a lot of people who don't understand the concept of how to play this deck, or how to play around your opponent countering you, which is like negating your attacks, using the Broly killer combo card, and just like allowing yourself to awaken on turn 3 or turn 4 even is not that big of a deal. And people just really want to rush that turn 2 awaken because they just want to turn their brain off and play Vegito, and that's not how the deck functions. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, a lot of people playing this deck. It should do very well. It definitely will top. This deck has a very good chance of winning the event, I feel like. It has a good matchup into Dragons. You have a good matchup into Zamasu, which is the other like big dark horse now. Not even really a dark horse, it's more like the boogeyman. And then you have all the other just like random decks in the format. Like, I think it just has an answer to everything. I think black is just in a great spot. And finally, we might get a different a black deck that actually wins nationals, which would be super dope. Going right into Super Saiyan 4 Goku, I think this deck is very good. It's just a step below Vegito. The aggressive nature of this deck is great. When you high roll, it's great. It's a little bit of a faster version than Gogeta X was back in the day, because the leader has double strike, and because Body and Soul is such a powerful card, giving your leader or another Goku crit. And 5k is just incredible, and also allowing you to basically turbo awaken on turn 2. So I think this is going to be a very good deck. You should at least tech for aggro, and especially this deck. But if you can survive past turn 3, like, you can kind of stabilize and just win. Gogeta is probably not viable still. It needs something like Body and Soul for it to be like really good. With having Marvelous Might back, that's great. We need maybe like one more Union Fusion card, because this card only draws off Union Fusion, not off of Union. I mean, sorry, off of Union. Yeah, so yeah, it only draws off of Union Fusion, not Union Patora. So if, like, playing the Vegito is as good as the card is in the deck, it's just not giving you any draw power, which is kind of stupid. Cumber is a rogue pick, I would say. I think it's not awful, but it doesn't utilize the Vegito 6-drop as well as these 2 decks do, so it just can't be considered in the same level. Blue Gohan Skillless, it hasn't really. I mean, it's topped a few events over the past few years, but it's just kind of always just been sort of a rogue pick. It's never going to be competitive as like a high level deck. It's just kind of okay. There's like 2 or 3 better blue decks, and you're going to play than this. Super Saiyan 3, I think, is a trash deck. I'm just gonna put it down here. I'm not gonna talk about it. This list, if you guys like, there's gonna be some decks on those lists that I'm not gonna talk about very much. This is the same list that I'm gonna be using for the foreseeable future. For every one of my deck profile, I mean my deck like tier lists, and I'm just gonna add the new decks into it. These are the decks that I deem to be better than the bulk of decks. I'm not going to do an entire tier list for every single deck in the game. I'm just not doing that. That's too much time. And there's just a lot of it's a lot of time to talk about like 85% of the decks that are just considered rogue or like below mid. Hatchiyak is no longer viable in my opinion. Red, so it does very well into red when red is very good because of red's low energy cost of cards, meaning they can only get like 1 battle card swing attack. Now we're kind of transitioning back into like a mid range to like control style meta, including with 2 very good mill decks. And Hatchiyak is not good to dealing with mill. There's a 3-drop battle card you can play that you put 3 cards back. That is not good. That is a really bad card. You're spending 3 energy to put 3 cards back, and then they're going to spend 2 energy to put 4 cards in the drop area, right? It's just not the same thing. It's too slow. You mill you get rid of 9 cards before you actually get to attack out of your deck. It's just not good. It's not good. It's too slow. There's just a lot of just negative with the deck. For someone who's played the deck a lot, I trust my opinion on this deck. Next is Soul Striker. I think Soul Striker probably revolves in like the C tier area. It's probably a rogue tier pick. Awakening at 4 is just still kind of bad. And again, there's just better blue decks that you can play that can kind of control their awakening better. Prism, not viable. God Trunks is probably rogue tier as well. Probably like existing meta. Like existing in the meta. It's not as good as Vegito. Not nearly as good as Vegito. And I love that everyone who was on the God Trunks train, and then everyone's like, yeah, God Trunks is better, and then like God Trunks just didn't do anything, and then now everyone's back on the Vegito train. Now it did top the Latin America event, and I was really pulling for that guy to win the event, but yeah, I think that's one problem with this deck, is that this deck actually has more RNG than Vegito does, and I don't find it like it's weird. Like you can't play the unison that like is made for the deck, because that card actually gives you so much advantage. Like it allows you your leader to have double strike when you go into your Z leader. It allows you to draw extra cards. But you can't utilize that and a Z unison to play the counterplay. So like that kind of like offsets it. The promo as good as it is. The problem actually with the deck is the 5-drop. The 5-drop is just so awful. It just dies. So like even like in like the format that we're gonna go into, like black is still gonna be very popular, and the counterplay just kills it. Or like red deck plays defeating the demon, or someone's gonna kill it. It's just not gonna do anything. So. Shroom and Salsa. I think Shroom and Salsa is going to be a very, very good deck. I think this deck is... Okay. I'm going to put it in C tier, but I'm going to make its own... I'm going to make its own tier. Okay? So... Alright. So... I wasn't going to talk about this deck until after Nats, but I'm going to talk about it now, because I don't think this is the deck I'm going to be playing. So this is the deck that I've been practicing to play at Nats. I have a good winning percentage into everything in the meta, that like from last meta. This deck has a really good matchup into both Shadow Dragons, preferably Nova, but now that Oceana's gone, we don't have to worry about it. Has a winning percentage, and has a very good winning percentage into Nova, and has a good matchup into Zamasu. The problem is that there's a promo that I need from the new set that I'm not spending $50 on. I'm just not doing it. or I actually can't find anybody to sell it to me. It's one of the two. It just kind of depends on the day. There's days where I'm like, I'm not spending money on this shit, and then there's days where I'm like, you know what, I'll buy it, but I can't find anyone who's gonna sell it to me. So that promo, the Dark Mask King promo, is 100% needed for this deck to do well. If you have it and you play this deck, you could top the event. You might not win the event because it's going to really be depending on what you play in Top Cut. But man, you have a good matchup into almost everything. I'm going to share a deck profile. If I don't get my hands on the Dark Mask King promo in the next week, I'm just going to give my deck out so people can see it. If people are looking to play this deck and they have the promo, this deck is great. Its worst matchup is black, which could come back to bite it in the ass if there's a lot of black being played, because I think you're going to see a lot of these 3 decks and Golden Cooler, and this does not do good in the black. Everything else, it feels great. But man, it's such a fun deck. It draws so much. Utilizing Broken Seal for 1 energy is still broken, no pun intended. But yeah, it's really just getting my hands on the promo. If I get my hands on the promo, I will probably play this deck. But if I can't, you guys will at least get to see the deck profile. So I'm putting it in its own category because I feel like this deck is probably somewhere in between B and A. It's somewhere between B and A. I just can't put it in A tier because it's not meta defining. But it's not gonna exist in the meta because it's probably gonna be like 1 or 2 people playing it, and one of those people might be me if I can get the promo. This is a 100% total opinion, total bias pick here, but if anyone wants to play, I will show you how strong this deck can actually be. It's incredible how good this deck is. Next is Autonomous Awakening Goku. I think it's Autonomous Awakening. The U7 Goku. So I'm gonna put U7 Goku in B tier, high B tier. This is probably one of the best B tier decks that's not A tier. It's so the problem with the deck is that you really miss having the 6-drop. Like, not having the 6-drop as a 4 of definitely hurts, and you really need to have it at 4, man. It sucks. You don't have the yellow boss monsters are all Shadow Dragons now, like all the good ones. So like you're really kind of in a lackluster place. The one benefit of this deck is that you draw a ton. You have tons of defense. You have your battle cards are decent, but they do get kind of popped by black and the counterplay and like defeating the demon and stuff like that. The other nice thing about this deck is that your opponent really doesn't know what secret you're going to play, because you can play like 4 different ones. So for instance, you can play Yano, you can play Victory Strike, you can play Gohan Piccolo, you can play Purunga. All 4 of them have different like play styles, but Purunga and Yano are probably the closest too. And unfortunately, if you don't know like the person and what they built, you have to just prepare for all of them. So if you're not prepared for the Victory Strike and they play the Victory Strike, you might just lose because of that. Or vice versa with Yano. So it's very interesting how to play against this deck. I played against this a lot. My testing partner plays a shit ton of U7. He's very good at the deck. So I have a lot of good experience with this deck, both good and bad. I'm pretty comfortable with putting it in B tier. It should top the event. It should be able to top the event. Blue Bojack. Unless you're Big O, I'm just gonna put this deck down here. I don't think American players play Blue Bojack. I've never really seen the deck being played over here, so yeah, I'm gonna say no. Green Videl, Rogue. It ended up topping Latin America with Kid Q in the event. I think this deck might be okay. I don't have enough data to really go on pushing it up at all, just because I've only seen it being played once. Red Pan. I'm gonna put Red Pan in A tier. This is now probably the premier red deck. I know it's gonna be probably between this and Future Gohan is what people are gonna play. I think Pan's really good. As long as Pan doesn't run into Vegito, like Pan could do really well in the event. It just has a bad matchup against black. I've watched this deck lose enough to black to know that it has a really struggles against black. Cell Reboot is probably going to exist in the meta. It's not going to be meta defining anymore. Zamasu. There's just other green decks that people are going to play. Like this one, which is going to be Green Goku, Nameku. I think Green Goku is probably one of the best decks in the game. And this deck itself is crazy. Just, it's so generically good. Now with Kid-Ku gone, your Unisons can actually thrive until they get attacked into, right? But like at least like you don't have to worry about Kid-Ku just playing 2 cards or just killing it. This deck might have the highest chance of winning nationals. It's really, really good. It's a really, really solid deck, man. I'm a big fan of this deck, and I'm actually gonna put it like right here for now. And I'll reveal the S tier decks at the end of the video. But yeah, I think this is kind of the order. I think Nameku has a good matchup in the Nova. I think these two kind of duke it out, kind of here at the top of A tier. We have Broly Surge, trash. Kid-Ku, or not Kid-Ku, King Cold, probably Rogue. With Kid-Ku kind of out the meta, your Unison can at least survive a little bit longer. This deck actually could be pretty cool. The support was really good, but we just haven't really seen a lot of people play it. Cooler, I'm gonna put Cooler in B tier as well. I'm probably gonna put Cooler just above U7 just because the milling is just so powerful. It's one of the few decks that can combat Zamasu, because you're just a red deck that can just remove everything that they can play, and you're also milling them out too. Blue Gogeta. So this is gonna be kind of probably a surprise to some people, but I'm gonna put it in B tier. I think Blue Gogeta could be very good. So it's been gone for a while. Kid-Ku kind of put a halt to that. Any sort of aggression, right? We're in kind of a weird sense where we have some aggro decks, but we have mostly mid-range decks. Like if you don't include like outside of like Nameku, right? These 3 decks can have the ability of like pushing your shit in like turn 2. A lot of the other decks are kind of setup decks, right? And if Gogeta likes that, Gogeta likes being able to set up their stuff. Just generic blue leader, plays blue yellow, like you have Nimbus. Got a lot of good cards in those 2 different color categories, right? The Secret Rare is still really good. You can play Beast, you can play Beaston, you can play the Gogeta, which is probably what you would play. Because there's not gonna be a lot of red, so I think the Secret Rare actually might be able to live a little bit longer. It's a really good deck, man. It's a really good deck. If I had the blue cards, I would probably be playing Gogeta as my deck, just because like getting to that like mid to late game and like having like a 12-13 card hand. You can do some damage, man. So I think this deck can be really, really good. I don't know if anyone's gonna play it, but this is just my opinion. I do think it's super good. Launch trash. I think this deck's really bad. It's just an awful version of like what Cooler does, without the payoff because you're a 5-10k leader. In America, you're not gonna see people play this deck. So like NA has the best player base for this game. I'd probably say for Fusion World and this game. This was broken at one point, and then no one played it. It's because it's not very good. So I don't think it's not a good deck. Not a good deck. Gohan Superhero. As much as I would love to see this deck do well, it hasn't. So I'm just gonna put it in D tier, and I hope someone proves me wrong because I really like this deck. Golden Cooler. I think it'll be B tier. I think it will exist. It's not better than any of these decks. It's got some cool little mechanics to it. It's actually probably better than Trunks. Yeah, it's probably better than Trunks. I mean, you have tons of free play stuff, which is cool, but the problem is that the Unison's super fragile. And then like one Koitsukai just kind of fucks this deck up. Like you just do a Koitsukai one time, and now they can't use their Unison effect. And then when you blow up the Unison, they lose so much pressure, because the idea is that you want to be playing cards for free on you and your opponent's turn. And if you can't do that on your opponent's turn, you're losing half the value. And then the deck just becomes just really average. Green Gohan, not viable. I think Nameku is just a better option, so there's no reason to play Green Gohan anymore. Finally. Blue Broly. Probably Rogue tier. Put it top of Rogue tier. I've seen some games of it. It doesn't look super impressive. But people keep telling me this deck's really good. So I'll at least put it in Rogue tier. Blue Beerus, trash. 7-Coup, trash. These decks are just too, like, these decks don't have, I don't know. These decks are just, they just play nothing but defense. And I think that's kind of bad. Like, at least with, like, Gogeta, like, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be playing, like, bigger battle cards. Like, for 4 energy, you have your Secret Rare you can play. These guys just play nothing but defense. I hate Beerus. I hate the stupid win condition of this deck. And 7-Coup also is just kind of average as well. It doesn't do anything special anymore. Mechikabura, not viable right now. Mechikabura could be very, very good. It just needs a way of being able to control its awakening a little bit better. If you had that, it actually might be like B tier, but I don't think it's gonna exist right now. Kaba, I don't know how this deck actually ended up topping the European event. I have no idea. I don't get it. I looked at the deck and I was like, okay, it's, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I'll put it in Rogue tier just because it did end up topping the event. Blue Gogeta is probably B tier now. I think you might be able to see this deck actually playing well. It's surprising to me that people weren't playing it, but I guess because of how just free playing Kid-Ku was, like people just weren't playing this. This deck is really good. Draws a lot. Double leader swings, like it does a lot of cool stuff. So hopefully we'll see some Gogeta. U7 Gohan, let's put it down here, not viable. Vegito, not viable. Tapion. Tapion's definitely A tier still. Did well in the Kid-Ku meta. I think it's going to do well in this meta. It's definitely not as good as these other 4 decks, but it's definitely up there. This deck also loses really hard to Shroom and Salsa as well, so it might be like down a little bit, like in that between A and B tier. Then we have Zamasu, and Zamasu is going to go up here. I think Zamasu is going to be incredibly good. There's something to say about having indestructible cards that also mill your opponent, also draw you cards. It's crazy. It can be aggroed down very easily. If you don't see dormants, like you just kind of start losing value. But all of these decks in the A tier have a way of beating Zamasu. So I don't think Zamasu is going to do as well as we think it's going to be. Zamasu, I would consider the boogeyman going into nationals for us. And as I said before, every time we've had a boogeyman deck, the boogeyman deck was not able to win the event. It actually had like very low representation in finals and like top cut. So all of them have. Cell Surge, Red Gogeta, Red Sin, U7, right? All these decks have had very low entries in top cut. They made top cut, but they didn't win the event, and there might have been like 1 or 2 people, right? So I think that's what's gonna happen with Zamasu. But your deck should be catered to beat. You should have side deck cards to work against Zamasu. If you don't and you play against Zamasu, you just might as well just scoop it up. Go to the next round. Green Vegito, probably down here, B tier. It just hasn't done what people thought it was going to do. It's just a weaker Namek-Ku. It's Namek-Ku that spends more energy. 9-drop's cute, but it's not as good as Namek-Ku. We have Fu, which I do find to be a very interesting deck. I think now without red being as prominent, hopefully, the Fuzi battle cards can actually live a little bit. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think this deck could do very well in being like that, like very kind of underrated deck. This is a deck I could easily see like just like you have one person who ends up just playing it and then this person ends up topping. I could see this more so for this deck than I can see for any of these decks below it. Go Bros. It's probably like Rogue. It's between Rogue and Trash. I don't really know don't think the deck's that good, but I think someone might play it. Blue Boo. So actually, I'm going to make a little bit of a change here. As I'm talking about this stuff, this is what happens sometimes. I'm going to move Tapion down a little bit. down right here. And I'm going to put Blue Boo in A tier. I think this deck is really good. The problem was always before is that red can just kill the Unison really quickly. But this deck has everything, man. It's got draw power, multiple swings, really powerful Z Unisons. The whole Z Unison swap thing is really good. Like you can stop your Unison from being attacked. You can bottom deck any battle card after you battle. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do with this deck. It utilizes Heroic Prospect really well, which is really good in the black. I think blue's super solid. I think Blue Boo might be the best blue deck going into Nationals. Yeah, I definitely could see it. We have Super 17. Would love to see this deck actually do anything, but it hasn't been played yet. So I'll put it in a Rogue tier. I'm sure someone's going to play it, hopefully. I would love to actually see it played. The Swap Goku deck. It's probably playable now again that Kid Ku is weakened, but I'm still going to put it in Rogue tier just because I haven't seen it played yet. Green Bojack is going to put trash. Frieza Swap trash. Rainbow Gogeta. Rainbow Gogeta might not be awful. Might not be awful. Yeah, it might not be bad. Plays big bodies. Yeah, I mean, Koitz, right? Koitz is kind of... You have the Z extra, which you can stop one attack. That's pretty cool. And we'll put it in Rogue. Put it in Rogue. I'll put it kind of like right here in the middle. We'll see. We'll get rid of this. We got Spirit Bomb, trash. 13, trash. Bardock is super mid. Now these two here, so we have Majin Vegeta, which I think could exist in the meta. I'm going to put it like right here. I think Majin Vegeta could exist in the meta. The Anniversary box support was super good. This deck definitely can exist. It recently topped an event as well in Latin America. And looking at that list, I was like, oh man, if this deck actually might be really good. The Unison for that deck is really good. And now with Kid Ku on again, I feel like this deck can do something. And then Future Gohan, B tier, probably like right here somewhere, like in the middle. Bumble Bunny Girl hurts a lot. It's less defense this deck has. This deck really just can rely on Explosive Dance and then like using like Topo and stuff. There is the new promo, the Vegito promo that is going to be available for Nats, which is a counterattack that plays a blocker that gives a card 30k for the battle on defense. So that's going to be something that people can actually use now. It is a 20k, so it's it is Koitsukai-able. But it's very good. I think it's going to help a lot of these red decks. So that is the list now for the best decks in the game. I'm going to be putting Nameku, and I'm going to be putting Vegito. These are my two. Okay. So, I think what these two decks have the ability of doing, their unisons are so incredibly strong, right? Nameku can play the Bardock. They also can play the Vegito now. Both of those are incredibly strong. Has access to Uneasing, access to Dormant. You have all just the middle, like the meat of the deck, just being a ton of 1-drops with removal and draw power. It's a really solid deck. It's drawing on both turns. It just does everything super well, right? You can almost say the same exact thing for Vegito. Falls in the same category, right? You have two unisons technically you can play. You can play the Fu unison from the Golden Cooler deck. If you only have one Z energy to awaken, you can use that. You also have your Vegito, your Super Saiyan Blue Vegito unison, which is one of the most impactful unisons right now in the game, other than like maybe the Vegito and then like maybe like Red Baby, right? Most of their 1-drops are just really big cards that either count as cantrips or have removal, and you can draw on both turns. You also have the ability of boosting your leader either by comboing or by its actual effect. So you can kind of see a pattern here. Both of these decks have those effects. Now, the difference is with these two, as opposed to Nova, who technically has the same sort of ordeal, is that the Unison is much weaker. Right? The Unison is much weaker. It's 10K. 5K, technically, right? It's not as good, right? Nova had a really good place in the meta last set because of the focus of most people's side decks were going towards Kid Ku. Now, I think your side deck is sort of split between maybe a third going towards anti-mill, a third going towards just generic good support, and then a third of it going towards Shadow Dragons. And that's going to be the difference now, is that now more pressure is put on Nova to perform when Kid Ku is gone, rather than what it was before. And I think that's going to be the downfall of the deck, is that there are a lot of cards you can side in both green and black that do really, really well into both of those decks, both Nova and Zamasu. So, I'm not going to say what the cards are. You guys go look up the cards, but there are cards in black and in green that dispose of both of these decks in a way that you, if there's a big difference if you're siding these cards or if you're not siding these cards. So, but that is my tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed, sitting down, just listening to some Masters content. We'll be back after Nats. Again, I might post my Shroom and Salsa deck if I can't get my hold of these promos, because I would like to share the list with people. I just don't want to share it if I'm gonna play it. I want it to be a secret if I'm gonna play it. But if I can't play it, then I'll share with everybody. So that will do it for me in the video today, guys. Like and subscribe if you guys did enjoy the content. Let me know what you guys think of the tier list. Just let me know, guys, in general, what you guys think of what we're going to see for Nationals. I'm sure I missed some decks, of course. I didn't do all the decks. So let me know if there's a deck I missed and where you think it would fall. Have a little conversation in the comments. So thank you guys for watching, as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video.